Hey, Tony Gaskins here, popping in. Want to talk to you about something I learned. Now, you got to forgive me about this here sound. And, when I'm on the treadmill, it's something I learned just as a man, being a man, and going through and making mistakes. And a lot of people don't understand that in marriage, you learn so many more lessons. And that's why I'm so adamant about telling single people to be careful with the advice that you give if you have a platform. Like if you're talking to your friends, that's one thing. But when you have a platform, if you have not been married, or if you're not married, or if you have not been in a marriage where you had to constantly work. I wrote in my book, Make It Work, that marriage, that love is a job that you cannot retire from. And it's work. And one thing I learned on the other side of being a cheating man to being a faithful man. One of the things I learned is that when we spread ourselves thin, we have a woman for everything. So when we are womanizing, we have a woman with the car, a woman with the money, a woman with the looks, a woman with the butt, a woman with the talk game, a woman with the head game, a woman with the dress game. You have a woman for everything. And a man can sleep with, I have heard from myself, 3 women in one day, to multi-millionaires, 10 women in one day, in a 24-hour cycle. That's the ability that we have as men. And when I said 3 women in a day, I was a broke man. I was a college student. This was before I met my wife. I was a college student. So I want you to understand how easy getting into bed with a woman is for a man. It is extremely easy. And it is extremely intoxicating. It is extremely detrimental. It warps your sense of reality. It makes you believe something that's not real, similar to what pornography may be doing to guys. But in every year of marriage, I learned something else. And I learned something about myself. And this year will make 16 years, March 30th. And Lord willing, we make it. And I've started saying that because I still understand, I've grown to know more about just the challenges to make it in marriage. Because I used to be young and naive, and I used to say, hey, marriage easy, relationships easy. But it's just because it was easy for me, because I had what I need and I was good. But I wasn't thinking about what my wife needed, and if her love account was full, if her love bucket was full. I wasn't thinking about that, because I didn't know as a young man who come from playing women and using women what all a woman needs. I got married at 23. I was 23 years old, 23 in about 2 or 3 weeks. I had just turned 23, got married in the same month. So it was a learning curve. And as I'm still learning, one of the things that I learned is that when a man goes from being promiscuous to being faithful, his mind has to shift. Our mind as a man. So what happened was I became obsessed with my wife, because for once in my life I made one woman my everything. And when you make somebody your everything, you can become obsessed with that person. And when you become obsessed, you can be very easily triggered. Get jealous easy. I was jealous easy. Jealous of every relationship, every conversation, and would make comments about it. And just really get to a place of just being like, I want you all to myself. And we all know now, as adults, we know. It's a difference between what we know and what we do. We all know right from wrong. We all have common sense. But when you in it, that's when you learn not to judge people, and to also understand that even though you could judge, you don't know what you will do when you in it. You don't know what you will do when you've lived it. You don't know what you will do when it happens to you. And that's still a lesson that I'm learning. Even as I'm talking about people who smoke weed and how damaging it is, I still have to be mindful of, I don't know what I would do with their stress, with their trauma, with their life. So I can speak into their life, but I have to understand I can't judge them because I don't know what I would do if I was them. And I've learned the same lesson about myself. So we all are flawed, and we all are wrong and broken in a lot of ways. And that was the thing that I learned, and my wife helped me understand that, because that turned into jealousy, insecurity. And as people have said, and this is what you have to realize, the people who teach are the ones who made the mistakes or seen the mistakes. Nobody is greater than anybody. Nobody is wiser than anybody. Nobody is a guru. Nobody is an expert. It's just that they've made the mistakes. So a lot of times, the more you can teach, it means that's the worst that you have been, or it's the worst that you are. So you got to realize, I have so many videos because I have so many mistakes. I have so many lessons. I have so many experiences. So as I make a mistake, as I fail, I learn, and then I turn it into a lesson so that it wasn't in vain, so that it has purpose and meaning. And that's what we don't realize all the time. And it's hard to understand that. It's hard to understand that. And I had to learn. And I'm still learning. And then sometimes what happens is, what I learned as a man is, when we aren't taught how to express ourselves. So I grew up practically a mute around everybody unless I really knew you. I did not talk. I did not show a lot of personality. My mom actually used to say to me, Tony, pick your head up, look people in their eyes, smile, and say hello. She said, people gonna think you dumb. Those are her exact words. She said, people gonna think you dumb because you don't talk. And so when I came into marriage, me being short on words, me having observed people, me having gone through head trauma playing football, I had to evaluate myself and see, and I'm not making excuses, I'm giving you an explanation. And that's another thing you got to learn. It's a difference between an excuse and an explanation. And so you have to look at the factors. So when I looked at the factors, I say, okay, Tony, why are you, when you speak, you're so blunt? You're so blunt. You're so raw. And your words can cut. Your words can hurt. Why are you like that? And I had to think about it and say, well, it could be just from not being a talker, not talking that much. So when I speak, I make my words cut, or I make my words count, and I speak from my heart, and it's a double-edged sword. In a speaking engagement, every person. I've never gone anywhere and spoke except for maybe once or twice in my entire life, and that was at the very beginning of my career. Like my first 2 speeches was the only 2 bad speeches that I've given in my life, because I speak from my heart. And what comes from the heart is gonna reach a heart. And it's a double-edged sword though, because when it hurts, when the words are too crass, when the words are too crude, when the thought is too exaggerated, and also coming from poetry. Me being a poet, I was a writer first. So when I would write something, the poetry over exaggerates the situation. The poetry prolifically paints a picture with words. And so the picture that is painted with the words most times looks far more detailed, whether it be gruesome or whether it be beautiful, than the actual events. And that's what the mind does for writers, is it takes it and it takes a real life experience and you use words to bring it to life. And you want the person that's reading it to be able to feel it on another level. You actually want them to feel it more than you felt it. And sometimes you become numb to your experiences, and then you allow the feeling to be had by the consumer, the reader of your poetry or your book. And that's what also I had to realize. Being an introvert, being a writer, not speaking, guess what? That hindered me in my communication at times, where I would be too harsh, too real, too crude. And so I had to learn that lesson. Tony, why would you say that? Mixed with anger, fear, frustration, insecurity. So see, this is the human experience. And this is what people don't understand, is this is what's going into marriage. And this is why marriage is so hard to make work. It's so hard to make work because you're dealing with 2 humans who have past experiences, past trauma, past pain, who has personality issues, personality traits, personality disorders. You're dealing with humans who have a whole lot going on. And this is stuff that it stumps therapists. It stumps trained professional clinicians. Like, it's clinicians who are licensed, master's degree, doctorate degree, that come and hire me for their relationship issues, because they realize they can help others, but they can't see themselves from the outside in. And that's what I had to do. I had to go to a therapist. I have to go to a life coach. I have to go and listen to the picture be painted of what it looks like. And even me helping others became therapy for me, because I started to hear women say things and I'm like, oh, she said this act made her feel like this. I've been guilty of that, but my wife did not express that to me, or did not express it in that way, or if she did express it, I did not listen, or I did not hear her, and I suppressed that feeling. So then I have to realize and say, okay, that's on me. That's my fault. On my cool down. That's my fault that I didn't hear her. So while me serving, that helped. I'm hearing this stuff, and it's helping change me. Now I'm starting to hear and grow. Now I'm starting to realize, oh, okay, Tony, this is what you need to understand. So what I see is that a person's history, and I heard another man say this. He said a person's history and their biography equals the makeup of a man. And we don't take that into account. And so a lot of times couples throw in the towel on marriage because they did not seek to truly understand, and they did not take the time to find the words that can communicate to their spouse. Because it's a way that I can communicate with you that you will receive it. But if I communicate in that same way to your sister or your brother or your best friend, they may not receive it. So for some people, you have to be blunt, real, and raw. And for some people, you have to be tender, sensitive, gentle, and it depends on that person's upbringing. Some people cannot feel it unless it hurts. Meaning, some people can't feel the truth unless the truth steps on their toes, like stomps on their toes. Like it's that real, it's that raw, it's that direct. That's what they have to hear because they were raised around savages. They were raised around wolves. They were raised in a tough area. So if you come in all soft and aloof and all of these big words that they don't even really grasp what you're saying, you're going to be ineffective. And see, this is what I'm learning. So the thing about it is I sound like a teacher, but I'm really just a student. I'm really just a student sharing what I believe life is teaching me. Here's another thing that I learned. It's when a man doesn't create a safe space, his woman will find a safe space. So if I don't allow my wife to talk to me and I reject it, then she'll go talk to somebody else who will hear it. The same thing happens the other way around with the man. If the woman won't hear the man, then the man will go find somebody else to talk to. And this doesn't always mean infidelity. This doesn't mean, oh, the person going to sleep with somebody. They could just be talking to somebody. And they could just be being friends with somebody of the opposite sex. It could lead to something if it get out of hand, or it could be their own friend or their own sibling or their own parent that they're talking to and using that person almost like a therapist. And they're emptying, they're dumping what they feel because they don't feel like they have a voice in the relationship. That's a lesson that I learned, not just being married, but also coaching other marriages and really being in and behind the scenes of countless marriages. That was illuminated to me that, whoa, we have to hear our spouse. And that started to speak to me. And as a man, I will admit, and it may not just be a man, because some women will say, well, Tony, I'm the same way. But as a man, it's hard for me to hear what's wrong with me. It's hard for me to hear that. And yet I can dish it out, but then when I have to take it, it ain't easy. So then that remind me, okay, don't be so quick. When you dishing it out, remember it got to come back. That's a life lesson. That is a lesson. That's what a lesson that we learn in the journey, on the journey. And so now I see that and I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. Another thing that I learned is when a man is hurt, we lash out differently than a woman. Now it's women who lash out. But one thing that I've found is that women choose to forgive a lot more and a lot faster than men. And as men, when we are hurt, we suffer in silence and sometimes out loud, talking to our woman. We suffer a lot longer. And in this suffering, we then cause more problems for everyday, average, typical man. And I'm an average, typical man. I'm not a guru or anything of the nature. I'm an average, typical, everyday man. And learning. And I realize, like, if my feelings get hurt, or even if it comes from a situation that I created, an environment that I created, and especially when you learning, you young, and it really ain't got a whole lot to do with age either, but just a lack of experience, your environment, all those things go into play. And you learning, and you may create an environment, and that environment produces certain results and actions. And then those actions could bring about pain. And then with that pain, you then have more issues. And when a man gets hurt, and I recently seen this with another couple that I was coaching, and the same thing was said, was like, oh, he can't forgive. He can't, he cheated, then I cheated, but I've forgiven him for cheating, and I don't bring it up, but he brings up my cheating over and over and over. And then you hear so many men say that, oh, it's different when a woman cheats. I actually lately have been hearing women say, oh, it's different when a woman cheats. Now, those women, they're talking about sex, because they're talking about a woman being a receiver and a woman like giving her body, like a woman's body being like given or taken, so to speak. And whereas a man not really being attached to it, and it not really being intimate or as emotional for a man, which this is what women are saying, but that's not all the way, fair, because sex is sex, and a man cheating should be seen just as severely, just as bad as a woman cheating, because the man is still exchanging spiritually transmitted diseases. He's still putting his life at risk to catch a disease and then give that disease to his woman. He's still taking a risk of getting this other woman pregnant and having that woman keeping that child and having a child out of adultery, a child out of wedlock. And it should not be this way. But one thing I've learned is that as men, we struggle with healing and forgiving on another level. And it could have something to do with the mental makeup, the brain chemistry, and also just the societal conditioning of men not being able to openly express ourselves and tell how we feel and, get things off of our chest, and being told, suck it up, get up, you're fine, big boys don't cry. And then not realizing that pain, feeling pain, acknowledging pain is how the healing starts. Because if you cannot feel it, you cannot heal it. And so as men, we've been taught to suppress and to run from it. And that then leads to vices. So there's this misconception that a man who is stoic and a man who is quiet and a man who is reserved and a man who doesn't show emotions is a man. I'll have you know that it doesn't make that man any more of a man than the man who expresses everything. Because a release is a release, and a man is going to have a release. So if a man is a brick wall for his woman, he's a feather pillow for somebody else.
somebody is seeing his pain. Somebody is seeing his hurt. And typically it's a porno that he's using, or it's a prostitute or a stripper, escort, whatever different things it is, a mistress, concubine, whatever you want to call it. So I have women know that. Like, don't reinforce that anymore. Like, don't continue the negative cycle of asking a man to suppress his feelings and to suppress. Now, we should have temperament. Understand that. We should have temperament. We should have emotional intelligence. But it's a difference between being emotionally intelligent and just suppressing something to the point that it starts to rot within us or becomes toxic for us internally, spiritually, emotionally, and then eventually physically, and leads to all kinds of health issues because the man isn't expressing. And that's something that I learned, that there's a balance that has to be found. A balance, and that balance would be called emotional intelligence, but the balance is knowing when to express, knowing how to express, knowing what to express, and knowing what to suppress or decompress. It may not be suppressing, it may be, instead of just having diarrhea of the mouth with every thought and every feeling, being able to sit and process those things and then have an outlet that is healthy. And that could be meditation, that could be prayer, that could be just quiet time, alone time. It could be working out. It could be doing what you love, operating in your purpose, but just having an outlet that is healthy and beneficial. And because suppression is rarely healthy long term for men or women. And this is something that I have found. This is something that I've learned being married and coaching marriages, that it's work. And we have to learn every step of the way. And you will always have enough reasons to get a divorce. And you'll always have enough reasons to stay married. It just depends on what reasons you believe in, what reasons you're going to lean on. That's really what it comes down to. And a lot of times we don't take that into consideration. We don't believe that, and we don't want to necessarily hear that. And it's a lot that goes on in people's marriages behind closed doors, that if you've never been married, some of the stuff you can't fathom. You really can't process it. You can't really prepare for it until you get to it. When you get to it, you have to figure out a way to deal with it. And that's when you have to tap into everything in you, all the knowledge and everything you've heard, everything you've seen, prayer, everything, to really get through it. But it's not easy. It's not easy. And we as humans, we struggle daily. We struggle daily. And one of the things is learning how to create. Something else I've learned is that we have to learn how to create a system and a regimen that allows us to grow, to flourish. So if that's working out, if it's reading, if it's praying, if it's doing business, you have to create a system for yourself that allows you to release your energy and allows you to release everything you need to release so that you can be your best and be full in your relationship. And we have to shift our mindset from finding fault to finding favor. Meaning, instead of finding fault and finding flaws, we got to look at what is good about our spouse. What is good? What do we love? What do we appreciate? And what can we stand on? What can we lean on in order to stay married and to keep pressing forward? Because like I said, you always have enough reasons. This clock behind me wrong, so if you pay attention to it, ignore it. We always have enough reasons to go our separate ways, irreconcilable differences. They're reconcilable. It's always reconcilable. It's just, are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to be selfless? Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to take action? And in marriage, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And what I mean by being uncomfortable is I don't mean being abused. I don't mean being uncomfortable by being unhappy. I mean being uncomfortable by being understanding, being compassionate, being selfless, being open, really hearing. And it takes work. It takes work. And going on 16 years of marriage, me and my wife is now, we're doing more work than ever. We're having to do more work than ever because your kids get older, life gets busier, expenses get bigger, brands and businesses and job duties or whatever it may be, all of that stuff gets bigger, it gets more intense. So you have to be more intentional. You have to be more intentional. You have to be more purposeful. And you have to every day analyze. So what I try to do every day is say, okay, Tony, yesterday, what did you do right? What did you do wrong? And what can you do differently? Like, what can you do differently so that you don't have to continue to make the same mistakes mentally, emotionally, spiritually? What do you need to work on? Where do you need to get better? And what do you appreciate about your life? What do you appreciate about your wife? What do you appreciate about your kids? What are you thankful for, grateful for? And really doing that work and going through that process instead of just complaining. And also, we have to be intentional in marriage about counting the good in the sense of not allowing all of our problems to mount up. What I mean by that is getting to a place where we can say, you know what? I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know why it's going to work out. I don't know when it's going to work out, but I know it's going to work out. I know it's going to work out. And I'm going to trust God in the process, and I'm going to do my part. And we got to be able to give correction and receive correction. Because at certain times in marriages, what I've noticed is that, and even in my own, familiarity breeds contempt. And what I mean by that is when we get comfortable, sometimes being comfortable in your marriage can be a good thing, but that comfort, if it becomes complacency, it can be a bad thing. And so it's kind of like, oh, hey, me and my wife on good terms and we happy, so I can go to the strip club. I could go buy more cars. I can go feed my gambling addiction, shoe addiction, smoking addiction, whatever the man may have, and vice versa for the woman. Oh, we on good terms, so I can go retail therapy, even though it don't need, therapy, we on good terms. I can go shopping. I can spend on this, or I can go do this, I can go do that. And we will get to a place to where we'll start to take advantage and we'll start to do too much, and we'll start to abuse liberty, abuse the freedom. And in those times, that's when a person in the relationship has to be able to say, hey, we need to talk about this because I'm not 100% comfortable with this, or we need to think about this, or we need to, understand this right here, and really be open and honest with each other, and not be hot and cold in the sense of only being able to have tough conversations when you're angry or when you're mad or when things on the brink. But being able to be happy and to be pleasant, but yet still be able to sit down and address real issues, real problems in the relationship. And we got to get to that place. And that's not easy. That's not easy. And that's something that I've found even in my own marriage while I'm helping other people in their marriage is, Tony, you gotta be able to speak up and to express yourself in a healthy way, and not when the straw has broke the camel's back, not when you're stressed out, not when you're worried, not when things are super tough, but be able to express when things are fine. Be able to say, hey, we need to sit down and talk about a budget. And for a man like myself now, who is a provider, talking about a budget is hard. That's hard for me. But so the mistake that I made is I would not talk about a budget, and we'll just be living, and then things will get out of whack. And then I'll be ready to lose it. Then I'll be stressed out. And still just learning and looking at, okay, who's gonna handle this? Who's gonna handle this? What's my job? What's your job? What's my role? What's your role? Because there's not necessarily gender roles, but there are roles. So my wife takes out the trash a lot, where some women say, I'll never touch the trash. But it was because of our schedule. So I'll be working, I'll be coaching at the time that trash is supposed to be taken out at night, the night before. And then I'll be at practice. Then when we come back home, we rushing in the house. It's 10 o'clock trying to get the boys ready for bed. So I come in, I'm on my phone, going through the comments, going through emails, getting stuff ready for the next day. I stay up late working 1, 2 o'clock. I forgot to take the trash out because I'm not even processing what day it is, because I'm an entrepreneur and I don't count Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday like somebody who works a 9 to 5 and they waiting on the weekend. Every day feel like Tuesday to me. And so I'm not processing it. So I have to become diligent and I have to become mindful. I have to set a reminder, just like I'm reminding myself about a meeting or a coaching session, like, hey, it's trash day, take the trash out. And then just also being mindful, every time I go to the trash and it's full, instead of just stacking on top of it, and I realize that, okay, everybody that has come to this trash has just stacked on top of it. Whether it be my wife or one of my sons, or, if her mom is over, everybody has looked at this full trash and just kept stacking on top of it. Let me not do that. As a man, as a leader, as a head, let me take this trash out. And I do that every single time that I see it. But then it's times that I just am not there because I'm focusing on providing. And then the next morning I may sleep in because I was up to 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning working. So I may sleep till 9 o'clock. Trash come at 7. My wife gets up 4:30, 5:30. to get her day started, to get ready for the boys, to get ready to take them to school. So she's up, she'll take out the trash. Or my 15-year-old, we have him take out the trash. So for some relationships, a woman would say, oh, never would I touch trash. And if you say that, that leads to irreconcilable differences. Because there are roles and situations and times in a marriage where you got to be flexible. Because if a woman say, I'll never touch the trash, that could be like a man say, well, I'll never change a diaper. And the woman say, well, that's your child too. And the man say, well, that's your trash too. And so if I'm gone, or if I'm working, or if I'm busy, you got two arms, you got two legs, can you take out the trash? The woman will say, listen, I'm tired, I'm working, I'm busy. You got two arms, you got two legs. Can you change the diaper? Can you take care? Can you be the soccer dad instead of it just being soccer mom? Can you be the dad that take them to school instead of just the mom taking them to school? And so marriage is so different from couple to couple that it's hard to just apply one blueprint for every marriage. Because what one couple does will be appalling and despicable to another couple. Vice versa. So what's in my marriage could make somebody else scratch their head, and what's in somebody else's marriage could make me scratch my head, and yet both of our marriages are working. Both of us are making it work. But yet it's so different. And so that's what you have to realize, is that when you get married, you have to understand your person. You got to learn your person. Learn and grow and understand. And they have to learn and grow with you. And you have to learn each other and then operate from that place instead of operating from a place of selfishness. And that's what's really hurting me, and bothering me in our relationships, is just the amount of divorces due to selfishness and just people not being willing to put in the work. And the work is hard. And some things, I'll be honest with you, some things that I have to change in my marriage, some things that I had to work on in my marriage, it felt like it was ingrained in me. It felt like it was my personality. Like, this is me. This is my lot in life. This is the way I see the world. And as humans, we have the ability to grow and change. And when we see that something isn't beneficial to our life or to our union or in whatever area outside of that too, we have to be willing to change. And we gotta do the work. You gotta put things in place. So if I say, hey, if I'm feeling stressed, I need to go to the sauna. I need to go to my massage chair. I need to go walking, go on a workout. I need to sign up for a coaching session with my dad, or get on and get me a therapist, sign up for a therapy session and just talk through things and express things. And I need to do this, because if I don't, then I'm going to be in this mindset, and this mindset is going to cause these type of problems. Oh, but yeah, I feel like I got to say something. I feel like I have to say something. I feel like I got to do this. I feel like I got to do that. And we don't have to. We choose to. We choose to, but we could choose to grow, and we could choose to change. So listen to me. One thing I want you to understand is that a lot of times people read into things, and for the longest, I would be analyzing the world and analyzing situations in people's life, and I would make a quote about it, because I believe as we learn, we should teach. And people would assume that I was talking about my marriage or my life. And people will call me like, hey man, everything all right? Everything all right? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, this message ain't for me. Now, I could learn from it. I could benefit from this lesson that I just learned. But this isn't about me. I'm sharing this publicly for everybody. Not just myself, but for everybody to grow. So I want you to understand that too. When I'm talking about this type of stuff, I'm not coming on here venting to you about my marriage. I'm sharing with you the lessons as I learn them from this vantage point, from being married for 16 years and learning in my own marriage, but from also being behind the scenes in several other marriages. I'm sharing this with you because you may be single or you may be married and you may think that it's just your marriage. You may think that, oh, it's just us going through this. It's just us that don't get along for a year or don't get along for a month or 6 months or always having a Kingdom Hall issue, a town hall meeting, town hall issue, or, always having to take somebody to task on this and that. No, that's every marriage that we have to do that work. We have to do the work, and it does not get easier. It don't get easier, it just gets different. It becomes different, but it's still the same amount of effort that you got to put in. So, hey, this is Tony Gaskins, a little teaching video. God bless you. We'll talk soon.